free time on this Monday.
Three,
I get.
2, 1. Hello, Clarice. Is the podcast still good? What are they saying? Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 96th episode. On this fucking madhouse, we'll be talking all about eating a good meal, getting a fine dining of all sorts of protein, and people. This is a slightly controversial topic.
It's
eating
still
people.
it's still summer barbecue season. It's September.
Yep.
I mean, come on, guys.
I mean, hey, this fits right in. What better way to close off summer than with some good old cannibalism?
It's a shame we didn't get to do this episode for our July 4th.
That would have been even better. Especially Sounds of Lambs.
Yeah, no, but back in July we still had original content, but I feel like at this point we're just regurgitating old stuff.
Hey,
we're at the podcast that eats itself.
He said the thing.
I said the thing.
No, so let's.
Somebody talk.
I do want to shout out Stephen. The original title was called "Tastes Like Chicken," which I thought was a fun title, but I couldn't help myself with the theming of Ouroboros.
Speaking of not being able to help yourself, let's talk about some good eating.
Yeah, but first, who the fuck are these cannibals joining me tonight? I'm your host, Ian Taylor. Joining me tonight
cannibals
is my great co-host, Devin King, and this American piece of shit over here. Who are you, Steve?
Yeah, no, I'm I'm the American in the room. I'm sorry, this is too freedom for me to understand, but this is some kind of joke. I'm too free to understand.
Yeah, I don't speak communist.
I can't hear you with all this freedom in my ear.
That's better.
Yeah, my Canuck comrades.
Yeah, Arron Kramers is listening from Nova Scotia, by the way. Hello, Arron.
Yes. Hello. And I'll be jumping in now and then.
Wait, okay, who's... I thought
it's
this
your
was
turn,
my
Stephen.
introduction.
Okay.
Feel free to chew us out whenever.
All right, shut up.
I am not Arron Kramers. I am Stephen Beason. I'm a filmmaker here in Hot Springs, Arkansas, America. I made a little film called Hopeless Romantic, which you can find on YouTube. You can also find me. I just did the Tavern Talk by Initial Reaction. You can listen to my thoughts on Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. This is probably the last week I'm going to plug that. But if you haven't seen that, that was a review I was so happy to be a part of and glad to be on their show. Returning guest. This cannibal film trilogy was actually all my idea. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you.
Go to their channel if you want to see Steven's pretty face. And
man,
it's literally him.
Literally.
But if you're taken by his suave vocal cords, just stay on the air. We got some good eats tonight.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of good eatings, let's top it off. Yeah. Oh my God, you guys are fucking crushing it tonight. Let's dig in. With the first course of the night, we got to open up with a something classic, something delicious, something that's been on a lot of people's minds over the years, an iconic recipe that lots of people have tried to replicate but couldn't exactly get right over the years outside of a few attempts. Let's open up the course with Silence of the Lambs. Mr. Beason, would you kindly take it away?
So am I gonna be the one to introduce this?
No.
No, wait. Oh, sorry.
How about I take Silence of the Lambs? I think Stephen wants to do Green Inferno, and Ian, I know you wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind introducing too. I thought I would give Devin the chance here.
Devin, it's your opportunity, man.
I'm gonna take turns.
Go for it.
Okay.
So, Silence of the Lambs is a 1991 film, directed by Jonathan Demme, who has done quite a back record of films, I think, before this. But this is kind of what put him on the map, at least in terms of film theory. People that research things. I think he also did the Talking Heads concert film, Stop Making Sense, which I thought was really fascinating. That he, did both of those and quite a few other films.
Mhm.
Anyway, this is an adaptation of well, I think it was the book by the same name, but originally it was adapted, or at least the Hannibal Lecter's character was adapted in was it Manhunter that we reviewed on
Yeah, it
this
was
podcast before?
Manhunter.
Yeah,
Bingo.
Yeah,
Michael Mann's Manhunter was the first adaptation of Thomas Harris's work.
there you go. I'm glad someone knows what they're talking about on this show. Anyway,
Literally me.
but no, but this harkens back to our Psycho Killer Cascade trilogy, which Aaron, it's very apropos that you're here, because we took a bite at some good films back then. Well, some interesting ones, let's say. Um, and yeah, we were kind of making comparisons inevitably to this film when watching Manhunter, because they both portray Hannibal Lecter's character. But I mean, it's really hard to introduce this film just because it's such a classic. I mean, um, Anthony Hopkins' performance in this is iconic for many reasons. He's considered one of the many faces of horror, even though this is technically a psychological thriller. Like the semantic differences in these genres matter all that much. But normally, on every horror maniac's wall of artwork, Hannibal Lecter's face is up there right next to Freddy and Jason. Just because he's such a compelling character, and he's only on screen for I'd say a good third of the film, maybe
16
in
minutes.
total. Wow, and
17 minutes total. Yeah.
he steals every single scene that he's in. With between him and Jodie Foster, just their dialogue on screen. I actually saw this film. It wasn't my first time seeing it, but the first time I ever went to the Highland Cinema, which is our little
Oh,
art house theater that we have in London,
you're
Ontario.
wounding me.
They did a Halloween double screening, retro mania screening of Silence of the Lambs on 35 millimeter, followed by Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and
Wow.
Holy shit.
seeing
Wow.
seeing their faces close up on that film print with the purple chromatic aberration through whatever that projector lens he's using, um, just seeing that in full detail was a unforgettable experience, I'll say. Yeah.
God damn.
Well, I will say, Jonathan Demme, I'm glad you brought this up. He actually got his start with some kind of B-movie stuff. His directorial debut was actually a women in prison film called
Of course you know that.
Cage Heat, which
Alright.
was a 1974 like Roger Corman picture. And throughout the years, he kind of perfected his craft. He did Something Wild, which is just a great film that we should talk about at some point. He did this. He did Silence of the Lambs, Married to the Mob.
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Yes,
Rachel
Philadelphia,
getting married.
which Philadelphia actually came a year after this. And unfortunately, Jonathan Demme recently passed away in 2017. But I was just reading, director Brady Corbett dedicated Vox Lux to Demme's memory. Luca Guadagnino dedicated Suspira to his memory,
Suspiria.
and Paul Thomas Anderson dedicated Phantom Thread to his memory. So I mean, we're talking about an absolute titan of cinema here, and I think this is probably his best work. I mean, I haven't seen probably enough to say, but I feel pretty comfortable in that. I will say this much: I watched this film, years ago. I mean, it's one of those classics. You really. I feel like everybody's seen it at one point, but when I watched,
at least know about it pretty well.
you at least, yeah. I mean, and it's one of those that has definitely entered our cultural zeitgeist. If you haven't seen it, you've seen parodies or you've seen, homages in certain things. I mean, this was. They did it in Clerks. They did it in Family Guy. They did it in like South Park. Like it's just
Simpsons, I'm pretty sure. Also.
Oh yeah, of course. But
Shaun
I
the
mean,
Sheep
it's one
movie.
of those. It's one of those things that is like, it's really a landmark. And I remember when I suggested this trilogy a while back as an episode, and I sat down this week and I was like, well, okay, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go rewatch this, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, it was good the last time I saw it. I liked it, and I was even prepared up until this episode. Up until I rewatched it last night for this episode, I was prepared to come on here and be like, well, it's good. I mean,
Well,
like,
actually,
but I think I prefer Seven. I think I prefer Fargo as far as like 90s crime procedural kind of films. Or I was prepared to get up here and be like, well, it's good. But,
Well,
but I prefer, Michael Mann's Manhunter. And when I was like, well, I need to rewatch this. I need to freshen my memory. I need to make sure I know what I'm talking about. And when I rewatched it last night, something happened because I hated this film because it made an absolute fool of me. I watched this film and I realized I was completely wrong. This film held up better than I could have ever imagined. This is really, essentially, to me, a perfect film. It is a masterpiece.
honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I mean, and I was,
holds up. I just
was
wanted to
so
say you can
surprised.
eat
Like,
your heart out. I didn't know.
no, exactly.
With a nice canned tea.
But
I
I thought you got your studio name from this film, because if you look in the background when they're on the police academy,
yeah.
doing these training exercises, there is a Dogwood Inn.
No,
I forgot
actually, I
about
mean, that was no. So for those who don't know, like, I have a little my short film was under the banner of Beason's Dogwood Studios. That was actually not where that came from. My as lame as this sounds, and now I wish I would just take credit for it. But my
Take credit for it
grandfather,
and move on.
yeah, no, my grandfather really liked dogwood trees, and it was kind of a family thing.
Oh,
But no, I
cool.
mean, watching this film, I was like, I mean, the
Damn.
performances are brilliant. Like, I remember, in fact, speaking of like filmmaking, and I know I'm kind of getting distracted here, but it's like, I remember when I first wrote my first like feature script, and I showed it to a friend who had done some work producing things, and he was saying like, yeah, it's good, you need to make some changes here and there, but he told me, he said, you need to read The Silence of the Lambs, the script for that. And I mean, and I had done that recently. I had kind of like, put that in the back of my mind, but like seeing this movie again and having read the script, like, I get it. I totally understand why this film is like a gold standard for storytelling. I honestly can't think of hardly any bad things to say.
This was
No,
actually sadly on my list of films I didn't get to until way, way too late in my life, because I remember I was in Fanshawe College and I was part of the film studies program, and Silence of the Lambs was actually a film on the list. I'm just like, holy shit, like, I haven't actually seen this movie before. Like, I've heard it referenced constantly, and I've heard my parents like talk about it so much, but somehow I don't know, like, it was just somehow one of those films I missed. And I remember
slipped
going
under your
home that
radar.
day, and I was like, hey Mom, Sons of the Lambs is on this list. And she's like, oh good, have you seen it? And I was like, no. And she's like, get out. Like, how
Yeah,
have
no.
you not seen this movie? But then I
No.
watched it, and I actually watched it at the school, I remember, because I was there really late and didn't have time to go home and check it out. So I watched it, and it was the creepiest environment to watch it in, because I was in the library. It was late at night. There was nobody else there except for the
Oh,
workers, and there was
I remember
nobody
this.
else in the
I remember.
screening but me. And what's even creepier is that there's actually in the studio room where you can watch it on like a big, nice projector screen. like there's actually a window that leads into another room, and it's like almost pitch black except for one specific chair. So, like, I don't know if the film just had like a psychological effect on me, but I was like constantly looking over my shoulder, and I remember like it was the most awkward, uncomfortable walk home from a movie like I've ever had. And yeah,
I
the
mean,
entire
I had a
yeah, go
very
on.
similar experience, because I was in that exact same kind of environment. First time I ever saw No Country for Old Men.
Ooh.
I just remember sitting in there, and every empty chair that I looked at, I kept picturing Anton Chigurh just sitting in there waiting to kill me.
Just tossing a
So
coin, just
it's
casually.
like the perfect environment. And yeah, those like windows to the other room, that was when they actually were projecting films like on projectors, back in those days. But they've since basically replaced them all with actual just giant TVs. Um, that's also it was one of those rooms where I saw Baraka for the first time, which was
Oh,
actually
Oh
not
wow.
the
yeah.
first time, but it was a mind-blowing experience.
I know,
I'll
and
say.
the entire time I was watching Sounds of Lambs, I was just constantly stricken with that feeling of how did I miss this? How did I spend so much time in my life missing this movie? It has like just about everything I want in it. It has psych like really interesting in-depth characters. It has a compelling crime that doesn't overtake the narrative, but it also has plenty of twists and turns that keep you engaged. The filmmaking's great, the editing's great, like everything about it is just really, really solid stuff. And I'm just picturing if it was in the hands of a different writer or director, this would be one of the most generic crime thrillers ever made. And apparently, a lot of the sequels with Hannibal Lecter are very much along those lines. But everything
Yeah.
about it is so meticulously crafted that it almost feels like an art house film with a genre flair to it. And
Hmm.
I was just
Well,
wow, like awestruck the first time watching it.
I think the use of the cinematography, the use of close-ups especially, where they have
The
characters looking
demi
right down the
special.
barrel of the lens,
Yep.
it almost makes the viewer feel implicated or directly involved in what's going on, and it's just such a powerful effect that they use. And
Yeah.
when you blow that
Jodie
up on a big
Foster,
screen,
I saw an
yeah.
interview with her. She described that as Hitchcockian when that was pitched to her by Jonathan Demme. That was like so out of the ordinary from what film studios and directors were doing that it was like this. It was almost groundbreaking, like
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
talking into the camera like that.
Yeah, like
And
no other film
speaking
really.
of Jodie
Yeah.
Foster, she really fought to get this role. Like I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know
it
what
was
role
gonna
she
go
was
to
doing up to
Michelle
this point.
Pfeiffer
Yeah, I was
originally.
gonna go to Michelle Pfeiffer, and then there
Which
was someone
It's
else
so
considered
weird.
I mean, I
for Lecter,
well, and
but
here's the thing. I
she
mean,
really
I don't.
fought to be in this movie.
No, and I mean, I don't mean this towards any disrespect to Michelle Pfeiffer, but it's hard to imagine anyone else in these roles.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
much along the lines of Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or like
yeah,
any
no, they're
popular piece of culture where it's like the casting is so perfect that it's not just a simple matter of oh the actors filled roles. It's like no, the actors are the characters. Like straight up, you can't picture them anybody else in the role. And I know that's kind of a saying that goes around a lot, but these films really just earn it. They really earn that saying.
no, I,
Sorry, go on.
I, no. I was just gonna say. I mean, the film actually was only one of three in history to win Best Picture, Best
Best
Director,
actor,
Best
best
Actor, Best
actress,
Actress, and Best Screenplay.
which is
And
Um,
this is
insane.
like the closest to a horror film to also win that kind of thing, I would guess.
I
well,
straight up say
no,
it's the only one.
the Exorcist also won.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
that's true.
Okay,
the
fair enough.
majority of those, and it also recently there was Get Out that I think was nominated. Um, but yeah, I mean, horror is not really a respected genre by the
Yeah,
Academy,
I know.
unfortunately, with exceptions like The Exorcist or Silence of the
Or
Lambs.
Get
But
Out. Yeah.
I mean, I think it speaks to this film where you see something like this, and I mean this film also this film was also released in February when it came out,
What?
and we as like film nerds kind of know that that's like
The worst time to
usually a
release a
death
movie.
sentence
Yeah.
for films. But this film was so good it didn't even matter. You
Yeah,
know,
and here's the thing. Something you're ignoring is that February films also never get awards attention. Like,
no,
never. That's usually
they
the point
never.
where it's just
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
you kind of missed your chance. You're not really, even if you're really good, you'll probably get like a nomination or two, and that's it, just
Yeah, it's
because
like
of the fun of the
January,
year.
February. Those are all the filler films. Those are all the non-tentpole. We don't expect this to make a lot of money or get much critical attention films.
Yeah, but this
No,
film had such an impact on people that the Academy remembered it all the way to next year. Like, that is just absolute insanity. I think it goes to show like the impact this film had on people. And watching it again, yep, it's still great, and I'd argue it actually gets better with age. I have the tiniest of
absolutely.
nitpicks, and that's about it.
No, and that was like that was what I was struggling with last night, and I was like, I was trying to watch it, and I was like, I was looking for flaws. I wanted to be right, but this film made a fool of me. Like, I can't stress enough. The only thing that I could maybe say about this film is like, I don't know, maybe the pacing, but like I didn't even mind that. I was
It
so
flies by.
enthralled in
Like, this
these
film is
characters,
almost 2.5 hours long, and it feels
and
like a
it
90-minute
never
movie.
like no, it feels perfect. Like it is, and I think man. I mean, I think we kind of talked about this too when we reviewed The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where we were kind of talking about like
Is there
films
anything
that
wrong
have
with it?
been
Not really. Yeah.
memed or parodied, or they've become a part of this like cultural zeitgeist to where it's like it's hard to take it seriously. We talked about that with like Midnight Express,
Mhm.
where it was parodied so much in something like The Cable Guy that it was hard to take seriously. And then we talked
Totally.
about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where it was like it's only been memed, it's only been parodied and homaged so much because it's that good.
Exactly.
And
And
when you
what makes
see
it
it in
funny is, sorry,
context,
go on.
no, when you see it in context, it still holds up.
Absolutely.
And that was what I went through last night as well, is like everything about this film, from the performances, from the technical elements, from the character arcs,
The
from
music.
I mean the music, the cinematography, like this film is I think this is like a pinnacle of what cinema can be.
It's a pinnacle of what
100%.
crime dramas can be too. Like I mentioned in my review that a lot of like really bad crime dramas, like I'm a big fan of crime shit because like my mom watches a lot of murder mysteries and I kind of get a kick out
Sure.
of the genre too, especially the noir genre. But an issue that genre can have is that they can often like focus too much on the crime and not enough on the characters. As if like the
Sure.
crime is the only thing that has like any tension or drama behind it. Whereas films like this and Seven and Fargo realize, well, the crimes don't really mean anything if we don't get emotionally attached to the characters. Like, they put the characters up to the forefront, on the spotlight, front and center. And that's what makes these films so special. Like, I wouldn't really give a shit about, like, the mystery itself if I wasn't, like, emotionally attached to, if I wasn't reminded that the victim had a mother, the victim had, like, personality traits, and did actually care about somebody enough to go and help them, which inevitably led to her capture. I wouldn't care about Jodie Foster's investigation, like iron that she sees in the case, if I didn't know like how much the case meant to her. And that's something too many crime shows and movies overlook, and that's a feeling that wasn't really captured with Hannibal's stories since like the Hannibal TV series with Mads Mikkelsen. And that's something that was
Well,
kind of lost that this film like captured with lightning in a bottle.
well, and I think when you're watching, especially horror, or you're watching crime dramas like you're describing. I mean, there's always that tendency for like this character is essentially knife fodder,
Or like
and
this
I
character
mean,
is going to die in the next scene to make it more sad and have the character be more
yeah,
emotionally
no, and
attached to the case. Yeah.
I mean, it stands up when I mean, just to kind of put it bluntly, I mean, Roger Ebert once said that this film is a horror masterpiece, and he included it on his list of like the greatest horror films of all time,
Hmm.
with Nosferatu, Psycho, and John Carpenter's Halloween. And I'm going to say that that's pretty damn good company.
Yeah,
Oh,
well
yeah.
deserved. Yeah, let's talk about like the details in the performances. Like just
Oh,
all of the
definitely.
like we could talk about like how well they delivered their lines and how well the cinematography focuses on them all day, but it's all the little details I love. Like how like Hannibal Lecter gives that little smile when he realizes that she mentions she's in the academy because it highlights like how easy it is gonna be to manipulate her. I love his scene with the senator where he's like it reminds her of her breastfeeding, just basically just exposing the fact that she's kind of like, you can pretend to be like a man all you want, but you're just kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing. You're a
Oh, yeah.
vulnerable person underneath like this stoic persona
I
you're
mean,
putting on, and even with the line, Senator, love the suit. Like he's just pointing out, it's like it's just a suit. Like it's not, it's not who you are as a person. It's just a facade. Like you're no
Well,
different.
and this is what makes him so
element of
terrifying.
Yeah.
no,
Is the fact that
there's
he's
that element of like cat and mouse through every interaction.
Yeah. And it adds so
it's
much tension because you're just like, okay, like what do you're carefully analyzing him like he's analyzing other people.
Oh yeah, like he's a the fact that he's a psychologist and really understands people can really get under the skin is what makes him terrifying, because he really understands the inner mechanisms of the human mind, and he can read people very quickly, and he may not get everything right, but he can infer things about your character rather rather quickly within a few minutes of meeting you, and that's a very terrifying person to come across. I think um, they might call that personality type these days like a dark empath, someone who like can empathize with their feelings but can also weaponize that against you. And that's a very terrifying and dangerous type of person to be around. And you absolutely see that go into full force toward the end of this film. Like
Absolutely.
you hear him say all these things throughout, and you can imagine all the stuff that he did. But then when he actually escapes, some of
Oh
those
man.
there are certain shots that are just seared in my memory. One is him grazing her finger, which is very creepy.
Oh
Um,
god. Yeah.
Yeah.
and then there's that where he just fillets and creates wings out of that one guy's back
Jesus.
after
Yeah.
escaping,
Great reveal.
or him wearing the guy's face. Spoiler alert for the latter ending of this film, but yeah, those
Well,
are
I mean, we can talk about plot here that essentially Jodie Foster, plays Clarice Starling. She's this FBI trainee, and she is hunting another serial killer who is actually really the only active serial killer in the movie. That played by Ted Levine, and his name is Buffalo Bill. He is skinning these female victims to make this sort of skin suit, which is absolutely terrifying,
Yeah.
but also inspired by the real life Ed Gein, who was also the basis for Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, etc. And so, in trying to catch this character, she has to go to Hannibal Lecter, and there's this sort of dynamic between them, trying to get information out of the other one. And I think it's interesting that, like, just the dynamic that they set up, and you never really, as far as like cat and mouse, I never really once had a handle on who was manipulating who. They're both at an even footing almost, but it's done in this way that keeps you guessing.
well, it's because he kind of leverages her for information. It's like, I'll give you what you need to know if you tell me
Quid
things about
quo.
yourself.
Quid
Quid
pro
pro
quo.
quo. And that's what keeps the drama, and that's what keeps things so enticing, because he kind of gets psychoanalyzed while she's trying to psychoanalyze him.
Yeah.
Well,
For
and she's
answers.
even told from the beginning, like, don't let this guy in your head.
Whoops.
Which
Yeah.
is
Whoops.
a pretty terrifying introduction. I mean,
Yeah, it tells you
oh,
everything you
yeah.
need to know, like right off the bat. And
Absolutely.
something I mentioned in The Last Seduction is a trope I hate in movies is when you have the only way you can make a character smart is to make everyone else really, really stupid. And I'm so happy this film like subsides that completely. It's like, no, the other characters are smart, it's just this character is smarter. Like, this character is just one step ahead. The other characters are smart enough for what they need to do, but they aren't borderline idiots. In order to basically just say, hey, this character is smarter than everybody else, they don't dumb down the other characters, and that makes the smart characters even more intimidating. Like Anthony Hopkins, like when Hannibal is in his cell and he's just like, all right, Doc, place your hands against the jail cell, and then he says, take off the paintings to like subtly, and I realized this time, like, oh,
Mind the
he's
drawings.
buying more time. He's buying more time to work those handcuffs. And it's so clever. And it's
But also you
weirdly
see the
satisfying.
close-up of the drawings themselves, and it's of Jodie Foster holding a lamb.
With the lamb, yeah, right after the
Yeah.
fantastic
Well, and
scene of them talking to each
he
other.
also orders lamb chops, which is like,
Yeah,
Of
you
course.
know,
and they're like, but
yeah.
he had a second dinner. Like, what's going on here? Like, why would he order a second dinner if not to commit the act? Although I have a minor nitpick in that scene. It's very small, but it kind of bugged me. Do those cops not have radios? Like,
Wow.
do they not have radios for them to just be like, oh,
Do
hey,
they not
Hannibal's
have radios?
killing
Do they not
us?
have somebody just outside the door?
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Also, how did he get that like lofty of a jail cell to be in? I keep
Well,
forgetting
that
how
was his
happens.
request. That was by his request.
Yeah,
That was
no,
his
that was
request.
part of the deal. I mean, that he had kind
Yeah.
of negotiated.
Well, at first, Jodie Foster like faked the deal, and then his
Right.
Hannibal Lecter's psychiatrist was just like, "I'll put in the deal, basically to look good." Also, by the way, that actor's perfectly cast as the ultimate douchebag. I mean, anybody with
Yeah,
that kind
no,
of haircut, I mean,
he's
come on,
perfect,
you can't be a
yeah.
good
Oh
guy with
yeah,
that kind of haircut.
like and like the guy that like runs the line that he is jailed in at first. He's pretty creepy himself. He says, there are not many police investigators that are as pretty as yourself that come by here often.
And they know that, yeah.
And,
Oh yeah. Well,
and
then you have
and
that
Baltimore
scene.
can be a really fun town if you have the right guide.
Oh God, yeah. And as soon as she turns him off,
Let me point you the right direction with my dick. Like,
yeah, and as soon as she turns him off, he's just like, okay, good, you know the rules. Like, he's immediately just in hard ass mode again after
Well,
like his fake niceness
I'm-
is brought down. Like, it tells us so much about the character for a simple conversation.
Well, and I'm glad you guys brought this up because this does a really smart thing that I think we don't see a lot of anymore, where this has an incredible female heroine attached to this, like one of the most iconic leading women in any film, I would argue. I would put this up there with like a Ripley or a Sarah Connor.
Absolutely.
Or, one of those types of performances, but it's able to make her look good and make her believable and make her have these struggles. But again, it's not doing that to the detriment of the other characters. It's not doing it in a way that is condescending or pandering.
No, it's like
No.
it
This
shows that
isn't
she's
like
able to stand on her own 2 feet. She's up to the task. She's willing and wanting to be here, and she's
And
wanting
she
to prove
has her
herself.
own weaknesses. She is a character first.
Yeah,
100%.
it's
Like
that's
she
what makes
has
her,
ambitions.
yeah.
She wants to be better, but she has these, traumas from
No,
growing
it
up that
makes
she's
her-
reconciling and dealing with, and that makes her just feel like a fully rounded character.
It
I
makes
love,
her feel three-dimensional, and I feel like
Exactly.
we lack that today. I mean, not even specifically with leading women, but just like in general. Like
Yeah,
this,
absolutely.
it feels like this movie is from 1991, but it's still like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Oh,
You were saying, Devin?
just the writing is so three-dimensional, and I love the shot of
Absolutely.
her going in the elevator with all the other like dudes who are much taller than she is, and she's
the red, yeah, yeah, and she stands
Yeah.
out, and I love the scene where she's like meeting up with the cops the whole time, and all the men are just like very awkwardly staring at her, and then it's that iconic Demi like stare down the camera technique, except it's like a long take, and then it transitions as she enters the room through the best scene transition I think I've seen in a film, where it effortlessly cuts between her at the funeral. Like that is that cut. I had to go back 3 times because that's just movie making magic. Like
It's
I
a
can't imagine how
perfect
long it took
edit.
for them to get that edit just right. Like that edit alone deserves the best editing Oscar. Like if
yeah.
if
And-
the rest of the editing was shit, and that edit was still in there, it would still deserve a Best Editing Oscar. Like, it's insane.
The setup for that scene is important too, because they were excluding her from a conversation because it's a sex crime, and they thought, oh well, she's a lady, she doesn't want to hear these details, so let's go
Let's
into the
talk about
next
this in
room.
private. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so already they're excluding her of it, where she should be able to hear these details because she's working on this case as well. But in light of that, she does have kind of a moment to reflect on her father having passed away while going to this funeral.
Yeah,
So I
it's
feel
the
like
same context because they're
yeah,
keeping information away from her in both
we
scenes.
get exactly, and we're learning more about her as a character, and she's growing kind of while she reflects on these things she's experienced and what she's currently going through, and
Yeah.
all that stuff just really adds to her character. Really, you know, helps her feel like a real person. And man,
Well,
I
and
just can't say enough good things about it.
yeah, I do think it's worth kind of addressing the sort of elephant in the room, because there is some controversy
Right.
surrounding. Oh well, I mean, we kind of have to, but there is some controversy surrounding the Buffalo Bill character. I remember actually one of the Wachowskis wrote a pretty scathing indictment of the character, and in watching this, one thing that I picked up on was they really make an effort, and it feels like a very clear and conscious effort, to really distance this character from any sort of trans identity, which I feel like I appreciate now in hindsight, because it's actively making this clear. This is not someone. Even one of the first pieces of dialogue that Jodie Foster says is like, "But trans people aren't abusive. They're passive. They are often victims of criminals." But Anthony Hopkins is explaining, no, this person is not trans. This is a violent criminal who is just very deeply disturbed, and I feel like that gives it a little credit in hindsight, and I feel like it's unfortunate that that's kind of been perhaps deliberately misinterpreted, but I can't put that as any fault on the filmmakers or the cast or the crew.
They are adapting the source material too. Like, this movie is
Well,
apparently like
so-
90% faithful to the book. On top of that,
Well, and actually in the book they even do go into the fact that the Buffalo Bill character was actually dating a trans woman and had tried to kind of like infiltrate those spaces, and she had broke up with him because he was so violent and because he was not who she thought he was. And obviously, I mean, this movie doesn't have maybe the luxuries that a novel can afford. When you're adapting something, you kind of have to do it in a cinematic way. I mean, there's already, I think, like 40 minutes of deleted scenes that were a part of this film, and I understand kind of where they're coming from. But again, I mean, the way that this film, that one plot point was misinterpreted, I look at it and it's not coming from the film itself. That was the thing that really stuck out to me. I was going back and rewatching this, and I was almost looking for that too, but it's not there. It's just not. And
well,
I feel
think
like
the fact that it kind of reeks of somebody that like tried to watch the film but didn't actually either pay attention to it or just watch it to the end. Like, they were just kind of dealing with a shocked reaction, and they reacted accordingly.
Well, and this is a very
I think the fact
film.
that I want to talk about this real quick too, and it's just because like a minority character or a female character or a transsexual character is evil doesn't necessarily mean the movie is saying transsexual, black, or females are evil. It's saying that that particular person is evil. Like, you wouldn't say that Darth Vader is racist because he's voiced by a black man. You wouldn't say that like Big Mama and Dread is like sexist because the bad guy happens to be a woman.
These are things that we here's the thing. These are things that we observe because we actually watch the movie and read into it and engage in it on a deeper level. Most people that just passively watch it or didn't even watch it and just hear about it, they hear there's a person who claims they're trans or presents as trans who's also this serial killer. That creates a connotation just in pop culture, and people will believe that about trans people just because it's in this movie, and then trans people have to push back and make that differentiation. Even though it's in the film itself, most people miss that if they aren't directly
No, and
watching and engaging.
Context is important.
That's why I brought up the deliberate misinterpretation. I mean, and we've talked about that too. Like when we reviewed,
it may not even be deliberate. It's just sort of a passive
judging.
No,
yeah, it's just a lack of communication.
I mean, but we
look into it.
Sure, and I mean, we talked about that too when we reviewed The Matrix. Like, I don't think Lena Wachowski meant what the internet took the red pill to mean.
Okay.
Like, there's always that element.
Here crazy.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. But, like, no, I'm serious though, and I mean, it is worth noting that like Jonathan Demme actually followed this film a year later with Philadelphia, which that film came out at a time where a lot of people were not willing to talk about that kind of stuff. So I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way. Like, I don't think that this film is coming from a bigoted point of view, and I think that's
I agree
distinction
with you. But when we just talk about the perception of it, you really got to do some stretches before you get into those mental gymnastics.
Well, I mean, I agree, and that was something. Yeah, no, I agree, and that was part of my experience too. I was watching it, and I was like, oh, they're don't
clearly
even say
saying
that.
like this person is evil, like this particular person is evil, like that's all they're trying to say. And the way the film is implying it is that it's the way he's achieving his goals that make him evil. I think that's a prime component of what makes a villain a villain.
Like, terribly misguided, and then just on a path they
and they even make the statement that he is denied gender reassignment surgery, not because of any other reason other than the fact that he's not suffering from this. He is like a deeply disturbed killer. I mean, he's his problems are deeper than just, gender dysphoria.
It's also really fascinating when you look around his place and you see that he has these eclectic like interests, like in moths and in fashion and butchering people. It's like it's like it's like walking around to any artist's dorm. The difference being most artists aren't killers, but is someone who has these eclectic tastes. And if he wasn't killing people, he would just be like the weirdo artist guy,
He'd be your weird uncle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Tony Jeff or Tonetta. I don't know if you know who that is. He's this weirdo artist guy from Toronto.
I heard about him. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with him. I do know there was a woman in Chicago, I think, who recently passed away, but her entire shtick was she made these art molds of like famous celebrities and rock stars' penises. And does anyone know about that? Yeah, super artsy, I guess.
That guy that
I know about that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Anyways,
ratings?
God. Man, like I said, this film really surprised me.
Yeah, we could talk about this film forever. It's good.
It sounds a
little
It's a classic.
I gotta give this a 10 out of 10. It is basically perfect.
Wow.
I'm giving this one
amazing
a 9 out of 10. Closer to a 9.5 than 8.5. I have minor
nitpicks.
I'm gonna give it a.
Come on.
No,
I'm gonna give it a 9.6.
Yeah, there you go. You have it now, Stephen.
Woohoo!
You did it.
Splitting the diff like always.
Yep, just sitting on that very comfortable bench. Well, guys, that was a great appetizer. Let's go for the course. Green Inferno.
And speaking of splitting open, the Green Inferno.
You said the thing.
I said the thing.
Separating the art from the artist.
Yeah. Ooh, there's a good one. This is a 2013 American cannibal horror film directed by Ian's favorite director, Eli Roth. Eli Roth, of course, having done Cabin Fever, Hostel, Knock Knock, which I still love as a dark comedy kind of guilty pleasure.
It is guilty
This
pleasure.
film, this film is an homage to Italian cannibal films of the late 1970s, kind of the exploitation, video nasties kinds of films. Films like Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox, Jungle Holocaust, lots of films. Actually, in Cannibal Holocaust, there is a film within a film, or within the film, titled The Green Inferno. I believe The Green Inferno is the movie that crew is trying to make. So this is definitely an homage to that in spirit. I mean, I
definitely not a ripoff.
No, it's an homage. I fucking loved this. I thought it was so much fun. I mean, I wanted to go into this and I wanted to keep an open mind. I actually loved it. I thought it was fun. I don't understand the animosity and the sort of disdain towards Eli Roth. I picture him almost as this guy who really loved genre films, grindhouse movies, and he kind of got the key to the candy store to make what he liked when he was a kid. And I find that incredibly admirable. I mean, this film may not be the best film ever, but I feel like it's a very honest film. It's not, trying to it's not trying to reinvent the wheel. There's no lame excuses. There's no apologetics. It's this is a guy. This is like a guy who's like, I want to make a jungle cannibal movie, and goddamn, he did. I had a blast with it. I'm anxious to hear what you guys thought.
Oh, I'm sure you are. Before Ian hops in and devours you, I'm just going to step in here. I decided to do some preliminary homework before hopping into this, because I felt remiss that I, to this point, had not seen Cannibal Holocaust, and I knew that this film was a direct homage to that. So I decided to get my appetite wet and watch that film, and boy, was it worth it! Oh, fuck.
Was it?
It wasn't the cannibalism and the other things that bugged me as much as the animal cruelty and the social commentary.
Sure.
especially the animal cruelty. But I do think it probably hits its point home a little bit better than, although these two films, I'm gonna try not to compare them too much, but they both do have different social commentary that they're making, and I have as many problems with both. But I'll Stephen, you said that you don't quite understand the animosity toward this film. I can maybe clue you in. I didn't watch any reviews prior to this to get any other ideas. I was just trying to develop them out of my own. But this film seems to like to attack bad faith activism, uh, and it has a whole state against this. And it was pretty stated pretty clearly by one of the characters, where the one girl. So like the movie opens up, and there are these people who are shouting outside, going on a hunger strike, and the two main girls, they're just annoyed that these people are making all this noise and they don't get what they're protesting. And the one girl is like, activism is fucking gay, and I'm like,
subtle.
That's Eli Roth
Subtle.
just putting his thoughts in his character's mouths. So okay,
Well,
I see where he stands, and I thought that whole premise was kind of bullshit. Going into it, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of dumb. This is kind of low rate social commentary, and ooh, we're setting up the irony of these people who are trying to help get eaten alive because just as bad as the rest of Western civilization. Although that does exist, there are people who do protest in bad faith, and it's really just to get leverage or get social media attention and all this. But I do think it doesn't quite paint an accurate picture of that. and he's sort of using the cannibal genre that he's paying homage to make this social commentary. Like, I see it as a vehicle. He's trying to sneak what his thoughts are on all these people making noise down his street or something, uh, in and injecting it into this
Well, I mean, I
into this cannibal subgenre that he's like, oh, I'm just
sure,
paying
and I
homage to the
mean,
old films. I'm not totally saying what I think about the current political climate or anything. I'm not like
well, I mean,
injecting Wagyu
Not
beef
at
fat into
all.
this
Yeah.
lean, cheap steak.
I think it's probably worth, I mean, I didn't think that was necessarily, the statement that he's making was like necessarily or inherently, problematic. I think what he's doing is.
But theoretically and hypothetically, you could say probably you could say there's some issues.
I mean, I think it's a satire. I think it is a dark comedy, a commentary on Gen Z and sort
Oh,
of
I laughed.
social
I
media.
definitely laughed at
And I
many
think it's
instances
funny,
throughout it.
and I don't think I mean, maybe it's not that far off. I mean, especially if you're coming from a position of, Eli Roth, who is very interested in making films that might be, shall we say, considered in bad taste.
Mhm.
There's the pun.
But
Maybe he does have this issue with people, being loud on social media, and that's sort of, inhibiting his ability to work. And I mean, again, I didn't really
it
read
felt very
that.
overt to me. But
Yeah,
I didn't
exactly.
read that
I
too much into it. I
Really.
thought this is it's kind of a comedy. It's a
It
dark.
tries to be funny.
I
It sure
see,
tries.
Steven, I will say I wasn't gonna read that much into it if it wasn't screaming at me. That
Yeah, I love
it
that.
stuck out like a sore thumb just for me. Like,
Well, I will say the ending got a huge laugh out of me, and I know we'll get to it, but no, I mean, I love this film.
I
I
know,
mean,
I know you do.
and I'm happy for
But
you, man.
there was another comparison I was gonna make. I will throw you a bone. I will say Bone Tomahawk.
Stop
I think handled this
making
type of thing.
puns.
what?
No,
What is
I
Bone
mean it. Like,
Tomahawk? What were you
Okay.
gonna say?
I think it did a much better, more subtle job of this kind of premise. Like, they're different, but it's the same kind of premise where these people come across as cannibalistic tribes. Spoilers for Bone Tomahawk, but it made it much more subtle in what it's trying to say with that film, I think.
Agreed.
Probably, yeah. I mean, but
But
I think this might be more fun. I consider something like Bone Tomahawk to be more serious and more grounded.
yeah. Again, it wasn't. I will say one benefit for this film that Eli Roth has. He didn't feel the need to kill live animals on camera.
Okay.
That was something I
That's
didn't need to
yeah.
see from Cannibal Holocaust.
Well,
Not
let's
necessary.
let's hear how Ian hates this film. I'm
Now,
not even.
listen. Listen, part of me had hopes for this film, not because I thought it'd be good, but because, you know what? Knock Knock is a hilarious, so bad it's good movie. Maybe this will be the same. Maybe this will have like a guilty pleasure vibe to it. And then it tried to be funny, and boy howdy. Yeah, it's a comedy, but it's not remotely funny. Yeah, it's a satire, but it's not delivered in a way
I
that's
mean, they're
subtle
on a
or
remote
interesting.
location, but other than that,
Yeah, and it's satire, but it constantly comes at the expense of the story or anything interesting. Like, I think of something like, Greener Grass, or let's say Brazil. Like, those are satirical comedies with clear points and exaggerations, but I still feel what the characters are going through in those stories. I still
right.
feel like the emotions that those films want to convey through, in spite of itself, in spite of its goofy behavior. Like, there's an emotional core throughout. Like, I don't care about the satire if I don't care about the characters being affected in a world that is representing the satire. And these characters are just like, yeah, I get it, Eli. You want to say that tree huggers are dumb and stupid and obnoxious and annoying, but that's all these characters are, and I don't care, and I didn't care about anything that was happening. I was bored. And I didn't
there
like
was
it.
one gag. There was one gag that felt like the most like, please laugh, gags that I remember seeing, and that was when the woman nearly shot herself in the cage.
Yeah,
They're like, go in the corner. Go in the corner. I'm like, I'm supposed to be gut punching laughing right now, aren't I, Eli?
Oh, or the
Yeah,
scene where
nice
the guy
try.
was jerking off. Like, it tries so hard to be
Oh,
funny.
that
That's
No,
just
and I did.
embarrassing.
Okay, here's what I want to jump in here. Okay, and I kind of alluded to this last week, and this is gonna be a spicy take. Okay, but if you've seen Eli Roth interviewed, and he has an entire like channel, like an entire show on podcast out called History of Horror, and he has people on his show like Bruce Campbell, Stephen King, Tony Todd, Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, I've
These
seen an
people
episode.
who are it's a great series, and these people that he's interviewing are probably the most knowledgeable people in the world about horror films and about genre. And he is not only able to like keep up his own, but he's so passionate in these conversations.
Sure.
He has a genuine like inquisitive nature about all of these films. And when I watch his movies or when I see him interviewed, and I'm not saying the guy's like an Oscar frontrunner. I'm not saying he's that. I'm not saying he's the best filmmaker. But I can't watch his movies and think this isn't a guy who's coming from a place of passion.
Sure,
Like
but that
I
passion is
legitimately
misplaced.
think
He,
I
he-
legitimately think he's making the movies he wants to make.
That's fair, but the problem is the movies he wants to make are bad. Like, yeah, he is
I-
a very
I
nice,
feel-
very
I-
wholesome person.
I-
He's
I
a great,
feel
nice
like
guy, but
Eli
he does.
Roth
Yeah, go on.
is the Kevin Smith of horror.
Yeah, he's
Well-
he's the J.J. Abrams of horror. He's, hey, remember this horror movie? Remember Cannibal Holocaust? Remember Cabin Slashers? Remember
Well,
like Hitchcock
okay,
thrillers? Here's a
and I'm
shittier
gonna-
version
I'm
of
gonna-
those. I don't agree
gonna
that they feel
jump-
passionate because it just he's clearly a fan of horror films, and I like that and I respect that, and he seems like a really nice guy. But
Well,
I
and I'm
kind of
gonna-
wonder if that's getting in the way of his films. Like, is
I'm
being
gonna-
a homage
I'm gonna-
all they offer?
He's a great film bro. I don't know if he's the best filmmaker or
Yeah.
at least storyteller.
No, and I mean,
But
I'm
that's
gonna
gotta be
jump
Cameron
in
said.
here because when I talk about someone like Panos Cosmatos. Okay, I watched Mandy recently. Now
Right.
I'm gonna get into this. I know, but like when I
But
watched
he's more
Mandy
ambitious.
recently, that's a film that would love to be a genre movie, but it just felt so. And I know this is a hot take, but it felt very inauthentic to me. I never once felt like I was watching something that was made by someone with a deeper appreciation for these kind of films.
I cannot
Like when
disagree
Nicolas
more.
Cage, when Nicolas Cage is in the car and it's like Reagan is on the radio or whatever, it's like, what does that say about the story? What does that actually add there? Or
He's
is it
saying
just
he
more...
doesn't care about the politics because he shuts it right off. And
No,
with
no,
those
no, but
with those films, it's not that he's directly trying to
I
homage to
feel like-
genre. It's in his particular case, just because he brought up Cosmatos, that was him grieving his parents and him kind of regressing.
No,
or,
and I
not
get that,
regressing, but like
I-
attaching himself to the time period that
And
he grew up
Panos
in.
is
and
more
I get that,
ambitious.
but what I'm saying,
than Eli
but what
Roth.
I'm saying is, when I'm watching something like that, and he's got Reagan, and he's got like chips and stuff, I feel like I'm watching someone who's going through a checklist
What?
of like, this was
How is
80s,
Eli Roth
this
not
was
going for a
70s.
checklist? He's
No,
absolutely
no,
going for a
because-
checklist. Like, this is the
because
part in the
Eli
Cabin
Roth-
Slasher movies that the characters go out in the forest and fuck. This is the part in, like, the not
But he has an
thriller movie.
understanding and a passion for those
That
films.
doesn't
He's
translate
not
to his
doing it for
movies.
like cred. He's not doing it to be
Neither
like,
is
ooh, I'm
Panos.
artsy.
Neither is
No, I
Panos.
think he is.
I feel like he's more ambitious. I feel like he doesn't succeed in his ambitions necessarily. He definitely didn't with arguably Beyond the Black Rainbow. But I can at least say, like, okay, like, you're
Well,
trying
and I
to take
know
this
this
in a
is, like-
different direction. You're trying to
Well, and I
do
know,
something
I know this is
interesting.
like an odd sort of comparison, and I could have made the comparison to like Ari Aster or someone like that. But I also feel like those guys are coming across like, I'm gonna make the greatest film ever. Like, I feel like there's this kind of pretentiousness
Sure,
kind of
but I
inherent
feel like they
to it.
deserve it more.
Well, but I feel like Eli Roth is more coming
Yeah,
from a
that's great.
position of
Being
like,
wholesome is great, but that doesn't
let me
translate to being
make
a
a
good filmmaker.
fun horror movie.
That's
And I
fine,
guess I
but he did a
resonate with
bad
that
job.
more.
Is my problem.
And, and that's fine, and that's fine if you want like a fun horror movie. But here's the fundamental problem of this movie for me, just as a viewer.
Devin's
Just let
going
me
off
get
the
this out of
rails.
here,
Jesus.
and I'll let you two go back to eating each other out.
No, go ahead.
Just let me have my cut here.
Go ahead.
And no, I'm not gonna stop with the fucking pen. Sorry, that's how I get my
No,
word
keep
in.
going.
So here's the thing. He set up a cast of characters I care very little for. And when they all get devoured, I care even less for them.
Agreed.
Because
I disagree. I thought the characters were fun. I mean, they're not
What?
supposed to
They're the
be.
most
I
annoying.
feel like you guys are approaching this and looking for fucking like Daniel Day-Lewis level.
No, I am
performances
absolutely.
here.
Oh, hey, I watched
This is
Brain
like-
Dead
Okay,
last week.
here's why.
All right.
Because they are bad faith activists. Because these are guys. Okay, maybe I feel a little something for her because she's roped into this maybe with good intentions. She feels like, oh, I want to be part of the cause, and something. And of course she's gonna escape by the end. Like I know that. I would have been thrown off if she wasn't, and then I would have been actually terrified. But I know she's gonna get out of fine. But yeah, she gets roped into this thing because she thinks it's the right thing, but the guy's a little sus, and they seem to be focused a little too much on the media attention. And I thought going in, okay, them live streaming off of iPhone 3s, this isn't gonna go well. But then the protest that they pull off actually works, and it was kind of at her expense, um, because she was like being put on camera with a gun to her head, and that's a very terrifying situation to be in. And okay, the guy organizing this thing is a bit of a scumbag. Obviously, he's gonna die, and I'm gonna enjoy it. And then they all crash, and then the cannibals think, oh, they're part of the team that's killing the Amazon all along. Ooh, the irony. But they weren't there to really help them in the first place, were they? So I don't really feel that bad seeing them all get eaten.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Well, I mean,
if
you
they
don't
if they
want
were if
to
they were
see
good
them
faith
get
activists,
Yes, I do.
because I just didn't care. That's the problem.
I
It's like
know.
if they were
Well, I mean,
going there for all the right, Rambo, the fucking fourth Rambo film did a better job at this, I thought.
Yeah, fucking Turbo
So,
Kid was a $50,000
listening-
film made by a crazy Canadian as a first-time filmmaker, and I cared about the characters way more in that zany little film than I do
obviously you're
here.
biased because you're Canadian.
Well, it's also a better written movie with much less
and
money
we
put
wear
into
that
it.
bias
I haven't
proudly.
even seen it, so I can't comment too much. But listening in, we have Darryl Ayles, an
Hey!
Ontario filmmaker. I know he's a fan of this film. Would you
No.
like to back me up here, Darryl?
All right.
Sorry, I always forget that there's 2 mutes on this.
Sorry.
What's up? Okay, so like
Oh,
not
you're just
to
waiting in
necessarily
suspense.
back you up. Yeah, I like the lead up to it all. Not to necessarily back you up because I'm not out here saying this is like cinematic masterpiece at all. And I have like continually got flack for my views on Knock Knock in the time since. But I will reiterate the same point. Seeing both Knock Knock and Green Inferno on a big screen, I think, really made me enjoy it a lot more than I would have been a lot more critical about things. But like, I don't know, man. For me, it was so like I love the saturated colors. Kind of like you were just saying, like just the end of what I heard, like kind of what's gonna go on. I think it is that bit of I've actually never seen Cannibal Holocaust. It's too much for me. But like it's that like his version of Cannibal Holocaust, the same way Knock Knock is his version of an early '70s exploitative thing. He's not the greatest director in the world, but when you're talking about like a young protege-esque of Tarantino, like a bloody ass fucking activist fucking and like kind of like you said, Devin, like I like that they get this thing but they didn't really care, so they kind of like get that karmic, like that's why they crash and that's what gets them in this Holocaust-esque situation. Oh, I can't really refer to it like that. Cannibal Holocaust, whatever, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I
so-
did watch Cannibal Holocaust just this week because I felt like I needed to before seeing this. It goes further with a lot of things for better and for worse, especially for worse.
yeah.
Um, I will give Eli Roth credit. He didn't feel the need to kill animals on camera, so that was cool.
And like he wanted to contact an actual tribe and like whatnot, and like there's enough done in this, you know what I mean? Like I've always with Eli Roth's films, I feel the love on screen. Like it's somebody who's passionate. It doesn't mean he's great at what he's doing, but like I love when I see and feel passion in a movie. And
Absolutely.
like there's odd sequences. I don't know if you guys have talked about it yet because I did jump in late, but the whole like letting her almost drown in the river thing is a bit much for me, but it wasn't intentional by any means. I get that, and she's not salty about it really. I mean, she was at the time, but you know, after a day or two. But it's just one of those like, did you really have to?
There is one thing I do want to give this movie credit for, at least compared to Cannibal Holocaust, and I'm guessing some of the other cannibal films. They do humanize the tribe a little bit more. Like, you have these little nice moments of seeing the tribe just interact with each other, and, oh, this is all normal for them, which kind of adds to the horror. But they're ultimately just acting like normal people, right? Just casually chewing on their friend. And I wish they focused more on that. And honestly, I wanted to see more of, from the tribe's perspective. Like, hey, this is just a normal Tuesday for us. Oh, another plane crashed with some random people in it. That's our title for the week. You know, like it'd be so interesting to just see it it be normalized from their perspective. You know,
I mean, that's Midsummer. What you're talking about?
Yeah. There you go.
Right. That's where you're actually seeing both sides and you're getting a portion of whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right, Steve. I forced in a Midsummer. You brought me in to cover your back. And
Gotcha.
No, but really, it does kind of
like. No, I thought Midsummer was more compelling in that regard, but I think there's issues with that film too.
Yeah, totally. I think in cinema it was just 18A. I don't think it was like fucking
NC-17.
Ours are X pretty much here, like restricted. I think it was just 18A. Maybe
it didn't go as far as Cannibal Holocaust that was literally banned for many years.
Yeah. But I mean, there's things that stuck with me, right? Like the fucking female mutilation scene and like the the claustrophobia and like
that whole lecture about it in the front, totally not foreshadowed.
Oh, dude, that was way too much. Yeah, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. That's the passion. He wants you to know because he wants that moment to hit that bit hard. He doesn't care about the subtlety. That's not Eli Roth. So that's my
and
side.
I'm gonna say, I mean, you know, like you're talking about kind of like him as a director. I mean, I'm not saying he's like the best director in the world, but I am saying that like one thing that I thought about too, and I saw some kind of like behind the scenes footage and some like reviews and stuff, is like when you are out there in a different environment and you're working with mostly inexperienced actors, like, you know, this real tribe, you know, you kind of take the shots you can get. I mean, some of that isn't all of his fault necessarily. And I mean, again, I kind of echo what, you know, Darryl was saying, is like, I resonate so much with the passion in this. Like, even at the very end credits, there's like a list of like his favorite cannibal films from like the 70s. And it's like, that to me is so much. Like, I just respect that, and I admire that.
At least he's citing his sources. He's telling you, look at all the films I ripped off.
You're a better movies.
No. I view it as like wearing your influences on your sleeve.
Literally.
When I
do respect Eli Roth in this regard more than Von Trier. He lets you know his finger is up his ass before he sticks it in your face. Or Von Trier pretends he doesn't. And then he's surprised.
You're talking about you're talking about Midsommar, but like.
No, I'm talking about
Midsommar tries harder than this movie.
No. Darryl was talking about Midsommar.
In terms of the interview.
The thing about Midsommar is like when Ari Aster was promoting that film and promoting Hereditary too, he's like, oh, you know, like I was so influenced by like Ingmar Bergman, and it's like, get real.
No, he was.
This is like a grindhouse film. This is like The Wicker Man. Just say what you're doing.
But he said what he was doing.
You still not seen past 30 minutes?
He's not. He's talking about fucking like
Ingmar Bergman. Like, yeah, I could see the influences.
And cries and whispers.
Yeah, I could see the influences.
Have you seen those movies, Steven?
No, and Steven, again,
have you seen Cries and Whispers?
Here's my problem.
Yeah, have you seen it? Hang on, have you seen it? Steven? Have you seen those
Yeah, have
movies?
I have not seen the movie yet.
End of
okay?
discussion.
Okay,
But
you don't
here's
know.
because
my-
it's the
here's-
second
you know
half.
what you're
no.
It's the second
Here's
half that really wears the influence of Igmar, though. Like, there's a lot of like spatial stuff, close-ups of faces.
All right,
that
but
hang and...
here's my thing.
Old
If
doesn't
Eli
equal
Roth-
pretentious.
No, I feel it because if Eli Roth came out and was like, "Yeah, I made Knock Knock," and I was super influenced by like Bertolucci's Il Conformista,
That would be
like
bullshit.
everybody would laugh.
But that would be
That's what-
bullshit.
It would be bullshit, and that's how I
Well,
view
that's
it.
Ari
It's like,
Aster's is not bullshit. I could see where those influences are coming from. If Ari Aster, he
I'm
at least
just-
tried to look.
but he's
at
only talking
the genre.
about those influences. He's
There's
not
nothing wrong with
being.
that.
But also, I think part of why he
I-
does that, in his defense, is because when a director is acclaimed and they're asked like influence of stuff, it means people will probably see what influenced it. So if he wants more people, like young kids, to see
That's also
Bergman,
true.
he's
Yeah.
just gonna say everything I do is like Bergman, and it
I
forces you to do it
just-
the same way Anderson does with Truffaut.
But
You know what I
and
mean? He's just
with
like-
Ari
No, and
Aster,
I'm-
he's trying to give like unique spins on these genres at least. Like Midsummer wasn't just trying to be like cults are bad. Like a
No,
lot of
man.
films like that.
But,
He was
like-
No, I'll
trying.
agree. No, give Steven the credit. The first 30 minutes are, but he hasn't seen past the first 30 minutes. So
Oh, wait.
that's what I mean. It's like it really develops throughout the film. Like I get what you're saying, but like you should definitely see the rest of it.
Yeah,
Imagine
Maybe.
commenting on a movie you've only half watched.
yeah, or
Right.
No,
referencing
your
movies you
movie
haven't seen.
sucks debate.
I don't know, but at the same time, if a movie couldn't hold you till that point, there's an argument there. But like, I don't know if you can necessarily say the movie wasn't influenced by something
if you haven't seen the movie.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And like he's
my-
trying to put
my
unique
point-
spin on things. I don't know what Eli Roth is trying to say with his movies beyond, oh wow, tree huggers are bad, man. Wow, nature's more brutal than it
Wow,
actually
I
is,
don't
man.
like these protesters down
Yeah,
my street.
wow,
I'm
original.
Well, I
kind of
have
So
to-
out there.
okay.
Man, I want to make that
So
movie.
I have to jump in here because I saw it because the whole plot is like, yeah, these protesters are, they're going to go to the Amazon rainforest and there's going to be like this big, tree hugging
Well, it's
thing.
the
And then
work
you've got
paid
this
out to
one
me.
character. No, and then you've got this one character who's like, her father is a UN official, and this whole bit. And at the end, after she like gets free, she abandons this guy who set them up because like he's he wasn't actually interested. Like Devin was saying, it was bad faith activism. Like there's
Yeah.
a shot at the end, it's the closing shot of the movie, that she wakes up, she goes out to her window, and again she sees these protesters, but they're wearing like t-shirts with that guy on the t-shirt, like his face,
Of course
and it's
he's
done
Irish.
it's done like Che Guevara. And I just thought that was hilarious. I laughed for like a solid minute.
Okay, you know what? That is a good joke. I will give you that. And
No, that's like genuinely funny
and Steven,
because
I
it
don't
it
agree.
speaks to how it speaks to people like who are in bad faith. It's not saying all of them are like that, but I mean Che Guevara was an extremely racist, bigoted person. He hated gay people. Yet a lot of people think that he was great because they want the government to play mommy and daddy. I mean, I'm just saying, like,
or they just see this guy's face on a shirt and they think, oh, this guy's famous for some reason.
no, and I
that was
think
my favorite variation of the Che Guevara thing is his face, and it says, I don't know who this guy is.
Yeah.
well,
Which
and
I
here's
think is the most
thing.
apt thing. And people
We
often, the
talked-
wrong people become immortalized or considered a hero because of they weren't there. Like the people
Sure.
don't know the situation, and there is something to that.
No,
Fuck,
for
was the
sure.
point I
And-
was getting to.
And here's the thing. I think we kind of like talked about this too, because Devin, I think you said this about what was it, Society, that movie from 1989 that we reviewed on the podcast. You said something about like this is a movie that maybe they didn't have the best script in the world. Maybe they didn't have like the best a lot of things, but they had like an idea. There's a commentary they want to make, but they're like, let's have fun and let's make a goofy, cheesy horror movie about it. It's not going to be as deep as Cronenberg. It's not going to be as like, on par with its social commentary. But we're
No,
doing
that's
it
true.
because we love it. and because we can, and we have this stuff at our disposal, and that's kind of how I look at this, and it's why I think I'm more open to it, because it's not like, I feel like if this came out and Eli Roth was like, "Yeah, I've made this masterpiece. Like, this is my statement," like, I wouldn't resonate with
might
it.
be my masterpiece.
So you
No,
like the
exactly.
movie just
Like,
because the
Alexander
person who made it
Paris.
is a nice guy. You don't like it because it's a
No,
good
I
movie.
think it's
I
fun.
know,
I legitimately had
I,
fun with it. Like, I
Steven,
thought
I
the
see
fir-
what you're saying,
Yeah.
and no, I like that you use my own words against me to draw that
Yes,
parallel.
exactly.
We're also
That's-
talking
that-
about a movie with a
that's-
$5 million budget.
it's very
Lighthouse had
good.
a $5 million
That's
budget.
very good argument tactic. I did enjoy Society for what it was. It was ridiculous. I didn't see it being a grand masterpiece, but I think I kind of agree with the commentary it's making, which is maybe why I had more fun with it.
Sure.
And I think you see this film as a fun kind of homage to these type of genre films.
That I
where
also love. Yeah.
True. And maybe you agree with what the social commentary is saying, where I saw this as a
Sure.
genred vehicle to put in this social commentary that I don't quite resonate with. So
Sure.
it felt like they were like sneaking a roofie in my drink or something, and I'm like, no.
Here's my question: if we're gonna
So
lecture,
it's just
go on.
we're looking at it through different lenses, is what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, if we're gonna lecture other directors for not being subtle with their writing or their satire or their criticisms, why does Eli Roth get a pass? That was what I was thinking the entire time. It's like, we've lectured on other people about this before, but Eli Roth is doing the exact same thing. And I'm happy that he's making movies he wants. I'm happy that he gets to make them with his gorgeous wife, even though she can't act. And I'm happy that all these people got involved to make something they wanted to make. But
She was good in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Come on, she was great.
Oh, she was in that. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
She was good.
Performance.
And
Eli Roth
he was
is
good
good
in Inglourious Basterds.
He's a better actor than he is a director. I'll give him that.
And I mean, that's probably fair. Again, like, I'm not coming at this from the point of view of like, oh, this is my favorite movie ever. It's not.
I just didn't find.
I had fun with it.
And I appreciate that. And I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's just, I didn't find any of it funny. Like, I found this film excruciating boring
You
and
didn't
dull.
laugh when the cannibals had the munchies? Come on.
That's
Yeah,
the only
like,
time I
what?
laughed. That was the one time I laughed. I was thinking during that whole scene, if more of the movie was like this instead of being an obnoxious quote unquote commentary, then like, yeah, this would be great. If it kind of leaned into that brain dead absurdism of just like, this is completely ridiculous. Like, we're not gonna make any statements or anything. It's just people get high off of a fucking dead body. That's the only time I laughed.
Cooked when it was in the bag.
Oh, it doesn't make any fucking sense, but it was like, that's the only time I kind of
They
vibed
stuff
into
a
it.
bag of weed in the guy's
Yeah.
carcass to try to get the traps people.
Oh, it makes no
and I'm like,
sense.
that's not how weed works.
That's the only time I laughed during the entire
Eli
movie.
Roth was probably smoking weed when he wrote that. I mean,
He's probably
I
smoking.
don't feel like Eli Roth has ever smoked weed.
he's high on life, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's done some shrooms, maybe.
He's
I
straight
love
edge as
shrooms.
fuck. Yeah, he totally like
One
microdoses
thing I will give
mushrooms.
credit
You're right.
for. This is the one thing I generally love about this movie. The practical effects look fucking sick. Like, the practical
they're
gore effects
great,
look
yeah.
really good. I will give them that, but the whole time it's just like, this talented effects team is working on this movie instead of a better project. I'm so sorry, guys. And considering they didn't have all that much money to work with, it looks pretty damn convincing.
That's the big thing for me, right? Like,
That's
I
the
feel
only
like
thing I
I
like about
see
it.
this through a different lens because, like, in these couple of years, while he was getting like at least a little tiny bit of distro into some theaters, like, he was making like nobody works on a budget that small in Hollywood. Like, they're all at least 5 to 10. Like, once you have names involved and shit.
It's true.
The fact that he could pull off all that practical stuff in a foreign location with so many like large like casts of unknown actors and stuff, all for 5 million, like, I just got to give the dude credit. Like, I think that's to answer your question, Ian, why I'm not holding it to that same.
That's fair, and I wouldn't hold this to the
Absolutely.
same
I
standard.
just to me it's like a whole lower tier.
Yeah,
And that's
I do think that that's all worth considering, absolutely, because working within those limitations, that's 100% like, yeah, like the fact
So,
you
like-
can pull off this kind of film with that is, I have some issues with the writing, but yeah, the production itself was definitely solid.
Sure.
The practical effects looked nice.
Well, do we want
Let's
to?
rate it.
We want to jump into ratings. Daryl, would you like to go first?
I mean, guys, I love this movie, but like it's a 6.9. No, I'll leave that for somebody else.
No,
It's
no,
it's a perfect
take it.
7.
Do
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
gonna
it's
go
a
ahead.
6.9.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna be a little more generous. I think it's an 8. I thought it was
Wow.
great. I had
What's your
fun with
rating?
it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm teasing you, buddy. Like, I'm glad. I am generally glad you enjoyed it, and like, I won't hold this to the same standard as like Jurassic World Dominion or Girl with the
Oh
Spider's
no.
Web, like this generic Hollywood trash that still fails in spite of its money. This was like somewhat of a passion project, you know. Like a lot of people seem to have fun making it, but I just couldn't get behind it, man. I was just
Sure.
really bored. Like, I didn't vibe with the humor
No,
or the
I mean,
tone at
I
all.
think that's totally fair. I mean, it's
I will say I wasn't bored. I was just sort of like thrown all over the place about how do I feel about this.
Yeah,
Um,
2 out of 10.
I'm going. Wow,
Oh,
that's low.
1
I'm
point
I'm
for the
going.
weed, 1 point for the
I'm going
practical effects.
to impale myself on this fence.
No,
I'm giving it a 5.
no, god damn it, son of a bitch.
no.
Not on the fence all night. Is that what that is?
Yeah, oh yeah, he's always saying on that fence, man. It's just it's covered in
You're
his
gonna
sweat.
give this a 5 out of 10.
Yep.
So we have a 5, a 2, a 6.9, and an 8.
This will be a very interesting letterbox rating.
Incredible.
Oh,
Well, it's quite the spread. What's the widest spread rating we've ever had in the show? Is that it?
society, probably.
No, you'd have to have a 10 in there. We've had a 10 and a 1 before for sure. That's gonna fuck your.
Yeah.
Should I give this a 10?
No.
Yeah, fuck it.
No, I am not including that in the rating.
Now I'm just giving it a 10 just to spite you.
All right. Okay.
But no, I think 8, 6.9, 5, and a 2. I think that's a pretty good spread.
All
We're
right.
just splitting ourselves open.
That was a
Steven's
very
entertainment.
interesting course. Now it's time for a strange European dessert, strange European delicacy, with the movie Raw. So this is directed by Julia Ducournau. I apologize if I butchered that pronunciation. This is her first feature film, which, gotta say, that's pretty crazy that this is her first feature film. Another great movie on this podcast, directed by a woman that was the first feature film. Same with Green Grass. And it's a very out there story, very unique twist on the typical coming of age story where this young woman, Justine, along with her, goes to a veterinarian school where her sister puts her through a pretty intense hazing process that eventually leads her to eating a raw chicken. And from then on, she devolves into further acts of eating meat despite the fact that she's supposed to be a vegetarian, and eventually descends into a childlike curiosity of good old cannibalism. Now, this is one of those movies where if you don't like it, hey man, I get it. Like, I can't even be mad. It's definitely not a movie for everybody. I 100% understand if you didn't vibe with the atmosphere or anything along those lines. It's very much like Greener Grass, where if you don't like the movie, I can't even argue, and I don't even know how to recommend a movie like this. But I personally fucking loved it. It's just from I actually watched this twice. I didn't even watch Silence of the Lambs twice, but this movie, as soon as it was over, I'm like, I gotta watch this again, especially
I'll
after
have
the
to
plot
see.
twist.
I'll have to see 100% what I think of it on a second watch. But
Yeah,
it did compel me enough that I'm like, ooh, there's something going on here.
absolutely.
And I really
Well,
enjoyed
kind of.
it because well, I'm just gonna say this really quick. So I feel remiss that we didn't talk about Kissed before getting to this film, because that's a film I've been trying to get us to watch. I know you really like that one, Ian.
It's a good movie.
Um,
It's just a very strange
yeah.
choice of subject matter, we'll say.
Very yeah, it's not about cannibalism, it's about it's an unironic romantic depiction of necrophilia made by a Canadian director. Interesting stuff. Not no.
Anyways,
Yeah. It would have paired so well with this.
I
sort of-
agree. Yeah,
The things that are just man, but I don't see the cannibalism itself being literal. I look at it as kind of a metaphor for this is the same argument I made for Saint in June. This element that's very visceral. I think it sort of reveals a psychological aspect of the characters, and this is something I think. She's coming out of leaving home and going into college, and she was grown up and raised a certain way, like being vegan, and then she discovers she likes meat, and the sort of irony of that sort of self-discovery, where you're going against what you believe growing up, and you're sort of in this, and it's almost like you're meant to be this thing, or you believe that. And I think that's something a lot of people go through when they get out of the house for the first time, go to college. They have this sort of moment of self-discovery of, oh, I like things that are different than what I was believed were okay growing up. How do I reconcile this? How do I, without pissing off my parents, kind of thing. And I just find that really fascinating, and that's what I saw this film as, just from a first watch. But yeah, I took the cannibalization less literal, but more of like a metaphor for kind of self-discovery, and I thought it was very compelling in that regard. I really enjoyed it.
Nova Scotian filmmaker Arron Kramers is joining us again.
Hey,
did
buddy.
you enjoy Raw? Arron Kramers, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, he loved it that much. He's quiet about it.
Yes.
Probably just having some sound issues.
Should I jump in here? Or?
Oh yeah, rip off the Band-Aid, man. Just rip the skin right off.
Yeah.
Just delve right into the raw piece of chicken.
I did not. How do you know what I feel about it? Come on. No, it's it's
it's fucking raw.
This is it's a good movie. It's
okay.
That didn't sound convincing.
Well, here's my
It's
thing.
a good question.
I went into this. My review for this was almost like how I felt about Baby Driver when we reviewed that.
Okay.
Because when we talked about Baby Driver, I brought up that this is like an amalgamation of a bunch of films that I already love. And so there's something about it that when you're kind of melding together a lot of these ideas, it didn't really work for me because I kept wanting to like think about those other films. And in the case of like Baby Driver, I was like, I could be watching Drive. I could be watching True Romance. I could be watching this idea of this young guy who's on the run.
Ironic. It's ironic because that's what you're praising Green Inferno for.
Well, no. I mean, what I'm saying is, no, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, yes, but with Raw, I feel like
it's raw.
This to me, it felt undercooked.
Yay! He did it. Good night, everybody.
I feel like if I wanted to watch this idea of like, oh wow, here's this abstract allegory for like women competing against each other and they're cannibalizing each other. That's Nicholas Winding Refn's The Neon Demon.
They're going for something completely different, I think.
Well, but I mean, I'm not even that big of a fan of The Neon Demon, but it's still kind of toying with those same ideas.
A little bit.
And, you know, the idea of like, okay, she's coming into her womanhood. She's dealing with this horror aspect that is influencing, you know, her transition to adulthood. That's Brian De Palma's Carrie. You know, when I think about, I mean, you could even argue, you know, the original Suspiria, especially the remake Suspiria. I just feel like this is kind of, I don't know, there was something ultimately very inaccessible about this film. I thought it was a little blunt with what it was doing. I found a review from Nick Pinkerton of Sight and Sound, who said that Raw is an unwieldy metaphor bundled in showy cinematography. And that's kind of how it came across to me. I mean, and you kind of brought this up too at the very beginning. You were like, if you didn't resonate with this film, you kind of understood. Which is also how I pitch Lars von Trier movies to them.
It's kind of one of those films that you either resonate with it or you don't. If you don't resonate with it, you don't feel with it. I resonated with it in the sense that Like I'd constantly get into fights with my sibling. I'd constantly like see people
Oh no,
crash on the side of the road and wonder what the hell's going on. But if you don't resonate with those kind of experiences, yeah, the film's not going to do much for you. I think that's very much by
well,
design, in fairness.
no, and I mean, I definitely have issues with my sibling. I mean, you know, but siblings. But you know, here's the thing. I mean, I don't want to shit on this film because I think there's something genuinely here. I do think that there are some genuine moments of brilliance, and I wish that
Nice.
maybe there was more of that. I will kind of bring this up in my defense because we talk about Deep Focus Lens, who's a YouTuber, and we've kind of referenced her
artist.
reviews.
Yeah, Devin's
Yes,
girlfriend.
exactly. Devin's waifu. Yeah. But you know,
I like your
listened.
stuff.
Yeah, no, I listened to her review on this film, and she brought up an interesting point where she said that when she watched this, she could tell that this was a film directed by a woman, that this was a very feminist sort of film. And I wondered, you know, maybe that's why it feels so inaccessible to me. Maybe I'm not
You're not the
clued
target
into these.
demographic.
No, maybe I'm not clued into these experiences. And I thought about, too, you know, the films that I just mentioned, Brian De Palma's Carrie, Suspiria, you know, The Neon Demon, those were all directed by men, you know, and so maybe that's why I'm not gelling with this. I don't know. I do.
So are you saying you can't empathize with women on
No, well,
No,
what I'm getting here is that yeah,
I need more Sigma males.
no, well, I get what you're saying. It's like you like it, but you wish you couldn't really resonate with it, and that's totally understandable.
Yeah,
I
well,
actually respect
I
that.
resonated
Well-
with going to college and leaving home and discovering things about myself that are that differentiate from my upbringing. And that is what I read into this film. That's what I took from this film. So that is where I connected with it. In her case, it was cannibalism. For me, it was just idealist stuff, you know, or you know, lifestyle, you know, preferences, you know, very minor things. But that's where I connected to this film personally.
Yeah.
You know, the other things not so much, but that's where I felt I had a through line that I could connect with the character in that regard.
Absolutely.
So that's what I latched onto, I suppose.
Yeah, and
Well,
my reading of it.
yeah. No, and I
um,
mean, I actually haven't haven't gone to college yet. So maybe once I finish, you
Yeah,
know,
you'll be
kind of
like, "This is a
revisit this film
documentary."
and be like, oh,
Yeah,
I get it now.
So
one
let's
thing I will
yeah.
say, generally speaking, hazing rituals are not that intense. I've never seen them go
I've
that
heard they
would
get pretty
also-
close.
off the chain.
I've heard they
I
get pretty
would-
close.
I want to bring on a veterinarian just to kind of confirm if the hazing rituals at veterinary school.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, well, I feel like this movie is kind of
man,
going
missed
for
opportunity.
like an emotional feeling than it's 100% realistic. In some fairness, like
Yeah.
aspects are clearly exaggerated. Like, okay, scissors wouldn't cut off a finger clean off, but that's what it would feel like. That's what it would feel like to her in that scenario, and I feel like that's kind of
Well,
what the
and
film's going for.
that was another issue that I had with it, as I kept looking for like the world building. I kept trying to understand like how does this work, and I think she's more, you know, Julia Ducournau is more working within the you know, fantastical within this kind of like you know, allegorical sense. I think you almost have to look at this as maybe more of metaphorically.
But I feel like you can
And-
still emotionally resonate with it beyond that. Like you still,
Oh yeah, for sure.
it's
I mean,
confusing
it's
and
not as
harrowing, but
egregious.
yeah, go on.
It's not as egregious as Men
No,
by Alex Garland.
or a lot of A24 films. Like I even said that in my
Sure.
review. It's like, hey, I don't
we
hate
also-
elevated horror, but this movie makes elevated horror look bad.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we also did cover on the show Titan, which is funny. We got to that film before this film. I think this film does some things better than Titan, or at least I maybe felt I could connect with the main character more. Where in Titan, couldn't feel like I could connect with her.
Well, and
She
see,
was-
I
It was
actually
fascinating to watch, but
I actually preferred Titan. And
I know.
by the end, there was something oddly charming about that kind of like won me over. I feel like it was more. I don't know. In a way, this feels more grounded. Where I feel like with Titan, it was very like balls to the wall.
Yeah, it goes
Oh,
for it
yeah.
completely for sure. And I think this film has a deliberate like tone for what it's going for, but I can also see like totally why that would alienate some people. But what'd you like about it? Let's go over the positives.
Well, I mean, I think the performances are great. I think the practical effects are great.
Oh my
I
god, they're so
particularly
good.
I particularly appreciated the way that the camera, is moving. I mean, the cinematography is genius. There's some really fluid, camera work. I loved the dance sequence, which this is the second film this episode
With a
that has an
creepy dance
uncomfortable
sequence.
mirror dance.
I was thinking that too. Cinematic parallels, and the fact that like the
Exactly.
music is
I
about.
beg to differ.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
go on.
Here's Arron
How
Kramers.
so?
Coming over the hot takes.
I like them. Oh, I like the mirror scene.
Oh, I like the mirror scene, but
I
it's
imagine
disturbing.
that mirror being me.
Oh.
Oh man, literally
Jesus
me.
Christ. I wasn't
Let her
expecting.
eat me.
Thank you for your thrilling
Yeah,
contribution.
This is the other thing. This film exposes some weird fetishes people have.
Oh, I got
Oh, yeah.
more. I just
No,
wanted
no, I
to
think
No,
we're-
no.
I think
bring
we're
that
good.
up.
Aaron, I'll allow you to enlighten us on the off the record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
let's
for your
not cancel
Thank you
you.
for chiming in.
Thank you for joining
Yeah,
us.
the practical
Um,
effects, like for such a low budget film and a first time feature, they look so convincing. Like there was never one scene where I was like, okay, like that practical effect looks fake, that scar looks fake. Never. Like I think the best was the skin peeling scene. And I'm like, did she just peel the actress's skin off? Like it's so convincing. Like the way it peels and it burns around the corners, and it was, man, like just incredible filmmaking all around for such a low budget film. And I think if you can connect with a film like this, it's going to be very special. But if you can't connect with it, yeah, I can see it being a bit disconnecting. But I appreciate that, you still appreciated aspects about it, Stephen. Like I mentioned this with Greener Grass, where I'm like, I love this movie, Devin, but I'm glad / surprised you didn't hate it. I'm glad you didn't absolutely
No,
fucking
I
hate
mean,
this movie.
I didn't hate it. I mean, there's certainly elements that I was not as responsive to. I mean, I definitely think there's something here, and I feel like a lot of the ideas that she's sort of experimenting with, I feel like she maybe perfected those a little bit more in Titan.
That's fair.
But
Yeah.
but I mean, part of the other thing is I'm more receptive in general to, and this is just completely from like my subjective point of view, but I think I've always resonated more with films like, Nightmare on Elm Street or The Thing. Those are just like two that come to
Hardcore,
mind,
like
where
horror
it's like,
movies.
no, it's like they're kind of like, they have this socio-political commentary that they're making, but it's more of like background in service to this story first. And I feel like this is more interested in making a statement, I feel like. And I don't know. I mean, when watching it, I was like, well, kind of like, what is the statement?
Well,
Like,
I think
I
it's
kind of.
completely interpretable. Like a lot of people made
Sure.
the puberty allegory, but I kind of saw it as, and hear me out, I saw it as an allegory for abusive relationships, and how like abusive relationships can change people and influence people in the wrong ways. And no matter how much you try to convince a person to be better, the truth is, if the child has experienced you acting this way, or if your father has acted like received your punishments in the past, like it's going to influence people in negative ways and hurt
Oh,
those
sure. I
around
mean,
you.
Yeah, like there's the older sister who
Yeah.
eggs her on to eat this rabbit liver, and then and then she starts feeling sick at first, but then she gets a taste for meat. She ends up eating her sister's finger, um, which is a bizarre scene. But then also we see established at the very beginning of the film, um, this car crash happening because someone runs out in the middle of the road. We didn't.
Yeah, great
The
teaser.
angle's far enough we couldn't see. It was a great teaser because then we see later on that's what she does, is that he sort of runs out in the middle of the road as a car is coming to make them swerve and hit, and then
Yeah.
There's a lot of
eat
great
them.
build-ups and payoffs in this movie.
Well, there is multiple interpretations, and I mean, I realize kind of the irony of what I'm saying after you guys just criticized Green Inferno for what I'm describing.
Well,
But
it's just
no, I
interesting
mean,
how it hits people differently, right?
it is definitely, and I mean that's part of like art being subjective. That's part of what makes the world go round. Again, I do think there's something here. I definitely. I mean, I'm glad to have seen it, and I think that Julia Ducournau, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Julia Ducournau.
Yeah, there we go.
Thanks, Aaron.
I feel like she's going to be a director to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And she's got like a very...
I agree.
You talked about like a sweet, genuine presence in interviews with Eli Roth. Like, I'm kind of impressed this woman doesn't really feel pretentious at all in her interviews. Like, she's very intelligent, but she never talks down. My favorite part is like there's an interview where somebody in the audience very rudely interrupts and says, "What's the point of your movie?" And she like doesn't like get mad at her or talk down to her. She just very politely like tries to explain the point of the movie, and then she's like, then the girl walks out. She's like, all right, as long as you reacted to it, that's good. And I like that mentality. It's like, as long as somebody feels something from my movie, even if it's hatred or anger, that's better than just feeling passive. And I like that behavior. As long as somebody feels something from my work, that's enough.
No, and I also saw an interview that she talked about growing up from a young age and being like obsessed with horror. She like one of the first movies she saw was Texas Chainsaw Massacre before she was really old enough
she was
to
like
watch
6.
that film. Yeah, and I mean, I respect that. I respect that, because it does show that kind of passion that I look for. Especially when someone is trying to do these genre films that I myself am very passionate about.
It's infectious.
I mean, I agree with you. I think she's a genuinely fascinating person. And even if this film didn't quite work for me, I mean, it's still pretty damn good. It's
pretty good. It's solid. You just couldn't connect with it. And I get that. But I know you don't have much time here, Stephen. But before you go, thoughts on the ending?
Oh, I thought that I disliked that part.
Go on.
I have to be honest. That was the one part that kind of threw me out of it. I felt like that one, it just came across a little shoehorned. In all honesty,
really.
I was actually connecting with it up until the ending. I was like, come on.
I feel like it was an effective plot twist. Like it explains why they tried to hide her. Like true cannibalistic nature. It explains why he buttons up his shirt whenever he's around her. Like and also like I just love that kind of like pessimistic vibe to it. Like the horror will never be over. Like this is gonna continue on. Like it's perfect like horror for the mind stuff.
This is how I read it, and I feel like this is really where the metaphor came in very clearly. That this is not exactly a hereditary issue, but a generational thing. Like your mother and I experience these problems, and you'll find your own way kind of through it. It's like we sort of pass on these problems to you, unfortunately, through as with everything else, and you'll figure it out in time. And here's like the damage that it created for me, but we managed to come out okay. So
well, and
I actually really like that ending because it shows.
That's a great shot too.
And see, the way that I interpreted it was almost as like a Lars von Trier Antichrist kind of ending. Where it's
we haven't seen Antichrist, Curtis.
Oh, that's just true. I've only seen Nymphomaniac.
Yeah.
Which was
the ending of Antichrist is more of a like, and I don't want to spoil it, and this is an extremely reductive reading of that film, which I genuinely like, but the ending is more of a women, am I right?
Right. I didn't get that vibe, but That's totally
well, I mean,
fair.
and that's that was just my interpretation. I mean, I don't know. Like you said, there's this almost kaleidoscopic quality to what she's done with this film,
And
and I
also,
feel like
it's like a
It's sort of
great
like
visual.
revealing that, like, so she discovers this thing about herself that she likes eating meat, even though she was raised to be vegan. And this is like a thing that she's like had to suppress and had to deal with and how to compartmentalize. But then it's revealed at the end that her parents have dealt with this, these problems too, these cravings, and they had to kind of navigate their own way out of this thing. And it is
well,
like
and see what I
it is
was
a generational issue that I
right,
see.
but
Like not
it's the mother, right? It wasn't like the father was not a cannibal.
I think what they're
but
trying
he
to
was a
say
victim
too
of
is
it.
that like every person can potentially, because that was a big deal that Julia made in her interviews, is that I wanted to humanize cannibalism, because we always portray cannibals as these like smart intellectual psychopaths and
Like
these
Or
really
Cannibal
out
savages.
there
Holocaust,
characters.
right?
Yeah,
Or savages.
but she wanted to ground it and basically imply that like anybody can have this horrible behavior, anybody can feel what these cannibals are going through. This can happen to anybody, and that vibe to
No,
it is
sure.
perfectly captured. I think the great line where he says, I thought she was just like any other person, it's like she called me her boyfriend, I hated that, but when I kissed her, like I knew it was all over. Like even if somebody seems perfectly innocent, something deep down can be troubling about them, and that's what makes it so horrifying to me. Like the ending just
Oh,
has such a
definitely.
visceral impact. And the music, come on man, tell me you at least like the music. The
Oh,
possessor
absolutely.
composer Jim Williams, everybody. Holy shit.
Well, she also I mean, her musical choice in Titan was phenomenal. That was one thing that I really liked about Titan, which had I mean, Titan had this very music video kind of aesthetic to it anyway. But all of the song choices in that were great, and this is not quite better, but just as good
For a different reason. It's
for
going
different reasons.
It's going for
But
like kind
again,
of like that John Carpenter, like body
yeah,
horror, like lurking beneath the surface vibe to it, and the music
sure. Well,
very much
and
captures that
again,
vibe.
this film is more grounded, where I think Titan is even more fantastic.
Which is
even
funny
more...
to say.
No, it is. It's the grounded cannibalism drama.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like I said, I mean, this is not my favorite cannibal movie. This is not my favorite women in trouble kind of movie. But there is something there. I'm glad to have seen it. There's a lot to appreciate about this film. There's a lot to like about it. Yeah, I mean, do we want to get into ratings?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I'm gonna say right now, it was gonna be a 9.5. The ending made it a 10 out of 10. That's right, everybody.
You're
rare
gonna give this
10
a
out
higher
of
rating
10.
than Silence of the Lambs. Really?
Yes. Personally, like I said, like
Whoa.
this film just had a profound effect on me. There's images in this movie that are gonna stick with me for the rest of my life.
I'm gonna remind you that you did not give a 10 out of 10 to The Exorcist, The Wild Bunch,
Nope.
Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver is one of my
you're
favorite. This is the hill. I know it's crazy, it's ambitious, but
It is
holy
very
shit,
crazy.
what a movie! If you didn't resonate with it, I totally get that, and it's impossible to recommend to people, and I totally get if you didn't vibe with it, but I vibed with it big time. It's
I mean,
incredible.
I gave
loved
almost
it.
as high as a rating to Snake of June, and Ian, you had no idea what to make of that movie.
I still
when
need
you
to see it
watched
again. In fairness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Steven, you still haven't seen that one. I'm very curious.
I have not.
You
I need
should
to
watch
see
it.
that one, and
Yeah.
I should probably rewatch this again. For me, I'm gonna give this a solid 6.9. I think this is, which is a very nice number.
Yeah, for a very nice movie.
Me, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah!
All I can
Look at
say
this.
is that
Look at this.
with Raw
What
and
a kiss ass.
Titan,
What a
Oh my god.
listen here.
Cope.
Go.
I'm going to say this right here for the record. for you all to listen.
I'm listening.
This is Julia
I'm
Ducournau
definitely-
has to be the most dude. Julia Ducournau has to be the most Kubrickian filmmaker working today.
Holy shit!
Wow.
I did get
I
Kubrick
don't know.
vibes. I'll give you that. I did get Kubrick vibes of this one. At
Devin,
least in
I
terms
swear
of
to
subject
God,
matter.
if you give this a 10 out of 10.
Devin,
I
what
swear
do
to
you
God.
rate it? And be
I
honest.
swear,
Be honest.
swear to
Don't
God.
sit on the fucking bench. Be honest. What are you gonna rate it? Bad or
Just-
good? Go.
Okay.
I thought it was great.
Hey.
Are you giving it a grade out of 10?
Yep.
Nice.
That's a solid rating.
Nice for a solid
well-
episode. Nicely done, boys.
Well, from the Green Inferno to the Green Mile, the Green Knight, and Soylent Green, even more people eating. Tune in next week. Spoilers for Soylent Green. Tune in next week. I won't be here, but I will be returning the following week. Really excited for that episode. Thank you guys for having me. As always, my thanks to Darryl, Ayles, and Arron Kramers for joining this episode. Thanks to Ian and Devin for having me on. Man, what an episode. What a discussion. I'm already hungry.
Yeah, let's go for seconds. Is it Thursday yet? Have a great
And
night,
stay
guys.
tuned for Conan, everybody. Good night.
See you next